fear, and the oldest and strongest type of fear is trepidation of the unknown. When we were children, our parents told us that monsters didn't exist, but we were sure that something was lurking under the bed or in the closet. Fear sees, even if our eyes are closed. Welcome to the realm of the arcane. My name is Lon Strickler. Join me as I examine unexplained creatures, strange manifestations, and remarkable realities. Imagine this next hour as a voyage of discovery to strange lands, seeking not for new territory, but for new knowledge of the supernatural. Come on board as we begin this adventure together. Hey folks, good evening and welcome to another episode of Arcane Radio, where we explore the unexplained live on Beyond Explanation. I'm your host, Lon Strickler, coming to you within a cannon shot of the hallowed fields of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining me. Now, Arcane Radio Beyond Explanation channel is made possible by you liking, subscribing, and sharing our programming. Super chat donations are essential for us to continue offering you our unique content, so your consideration is very much needed and appreciated. So tonight is going to be a bit of a somber one. We're going to be remembering our friend, colleague, Butch Witkowski. I've invited a couple of folks who've known Butch for several years. I've got Sean Forker, Eric Altman, and Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio. So guys, thanks for coming on tonight.
Thanks for having us, Lon. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Lon.
So I guess we'll go around the table here and get each one of your perspective of Butch and what you remember most about Butch. And let's start off with Sean.
Well, Lon, I kind of met you and Butch around the same time when we were doing with Eric, Beyond the Edge Radio, and then off into Arcane Radio. And in Pennsylvania, you know, where we live and I reside, you don't know much about UFOlogy in Pennsylvania until you talk to Butch Witkowski. And I became familiar with Butch through you guys and became great friends. And, you know, when I found out he had passed away, when you informed me, it was like, you know, like I told you, it's like losing a grandfather. You know, you and Butch are like surrogate parents to me. And spent a lot of time with you guys. And, you know, what can you say about Butch? I always told everybody he had a BA and BS. The man could talk like nobody's business. And he was fantastically passionate about the subject of UFOs, cryptozoology, and he'd get his boots on the ground. And, of course, the van. You know, who could mention Butch without the UFO research van, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Passionate. That's what I think of Butch. Passionate.
Yep. Yeah, that van was his baby. There's no doubt about that. And he let everybody know about it as well. And he had that thing loaded. It was always, you've been in with him and driven around, me as well. And
man, the road trips alone were a blast with Butch.
Well, you were with him that weekend. He was up at Eric's Bigfoot adventure. That was the weekend right before he had his heart attack.
Yeah, that was a unique weekend. We had a great dinner with, you know, friends Paul Lucas, who introduced me to, and they made us a great meal and spending time with Eric, and just a great weekend we were having. And that Saturday afternoon, he wasn't feeling too great, and we were getting ready to go back down and hang out a little bit. And he goes, "I think I got to head home." And, you know, being stubborn like Butch could be at times, like, maybe you shouldn't do that trip alone. No, I'll be fine. And, of course, you get home, and a couple days later, we found out he had that, you know, major heart attack.
Yeah. So, Eric, what are your impressions of Butch, and what do you remember about him?
Gosh, I met Butch years ago. I met him out east at one of, I think, Rick Fisher's events is where I first met him. And we connected on social media and just kept in touch through that. And that's how I really got to know him, is through social media, talking with him, and on the phone. He used to call me quite a bit, and we talk about things that were going on in Pennsylvania, UFO sightings that were happening, things that he was investigating, things I was investigating, always offering me advice on the UFO subjects, especially because, as you guys know, I'm not a big UFO researcher or an investigator. It's a fascination of mine, but he was always sharing stories with me. And yeah, I have to agree with Sean. Passionate is the best word that describes him. He's very, very passionate about his work, very serious about the investigations that he did. And he took his work, and he took the subject matter very seriously. He was boots on the ground, as Sean said. He went and investigated, and I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to have him down to the Bigfoot adventure back in 2019. I think it was the last time Butch and I actually connected in person, was at the camping adventure. And as busy as I was at least able to make some time to talk to Butch. He gave me a tour of his van, which was just out of this world, no pun intended. It was really cool to see all the gizmos he put in it, all the hard work, because he had talked to me about that van and wanting to put it together, and just to be able to see it and know that that was his baby, as Sean said, alluded to, and was able to get into the van, see the heart and soul of what he put together. And it's sad that he wasn't really able to utilize it that much, but I know he was really proud of that accomplishment. But we still kept in touch. And as Dave would know, I was on Dave's show several times giving an update about Butch's condition. And we were so grateful and so blessed that Butch recovered from that major heart attack and was able to come back and still continue to investigate even after that heart attack, and get back on the airwaves with you guys, and still kept in the loop of everything that was going on. So a great asset to the field, in my opinion. A great friend. I've got to know him over the years, and I considered him an inspiration as far as ufology goes, cryptid research goes, and just in general. He gave it all. He gave it all he got, guys, and that's the bottom line. And we're going to miss him.
Yeah, well, that we are. So, Dave, Butch was a monthly regular on Spaced Out Radio. I don't know how many years, maybe 3. I don't know, but why don't you give us your thoughts on Butch?
I can tell you, Lon, the first time I interviewed Butch, it was probably the spring of 2015. And I felt so horrible because I try and be pretty professional on the show. And for some idiotic reason, I kept calling him Bruce. And and he'd be like, "No, it's Butch. No, it's Butch." And I don't know why I kept on doing that. And long story short, a couple months later, I asked him, as we were kind of formulating what to do on doing our schedule. I had the strength to ask this big, tough, intimidating guy if he would become a monthly guest on Spaced Out Radio. And sure enough, he said yes. And we did it for 6 years. And one of the things that I will always love about the man is we built a friendship. And every time before the show, I'd call him up and he'd be like, "What the hell are we talking about today?" And I'd be like, "I don't know. I'm just trying to think of something to piss you off." And he goes, "Well, I'm sure you'll find something." And he would always mention about why do we even have these conversations? Because the minute we get into a subject, our audience takes it in a completely different direction than where we wanted to go. But, unfortunately, the one thing I will regret is I never got to meet him face to face. I never got to give him that hug, that, because he was like a father to me in this field, and to so many others. That the one thing that Butch always respected was he respected people's honesty and integrity in their hard work. And it didn't matter whether you were on the west coast of Canada like I am, or you live just down the street from him. What he really enjoyed was respect and honesty, and he gave it back tenfold. And I'll tell you, it is a huge, huge hole in my programming to fill. And Lon, I mean, thank you so much. You're going to be filling in on those final Mondays of every month. And I hope you don't mind a cheesy little plug here, but on Spaced Out Radio, this Monday night coming would have been our first episode of Strange Days with Butch for 2022. And these gentlemen who you see here, along with a couple others, are going to be my guests for our tribute show to Butch. I just didn't want to book it on any other night besides his night. And God bless him. I love the man, and I'm still not over this.
Well, Butch was supposed to be on tonight with me. So that's why I figured, well, I'm going to go ahead and put the tribute show on this. The first time I met Butch, now I'm going to be honest with you. And I know Sean can verify this, and I know Eric can verify. We were at the Phenomenology in Gettysburg in 2013. And, when you go to those things, you sit behind the table and shoot the shit, and you're just thinking about everything. You're not only looking at all the girls going by, but you're talking about all kinds of crazy stuff. And I got on this rant about the Todd Sees case. And I was telling Sean, I've hit a dead end with this thing. I've tried to go back into it a couple of times, and I'm just not getting anything. And I need to find somebody or something to do in order to get this thing off the ground. Well, I didn't know that Butch was investigating this. And in fact, I had only ever talked to Butch one time before that, maybe 10 years previous. And I had put up on Facebook and on the blog that I was going to look into the Todd Sees case. And if anybody wanted to assist or get involved with it, to let me know. Well, Butch got on the horn and called me up. And that's how I met Butch, really. I mean, right there, we were on the phone like 3 hours that day, and we were on the phone a long day. I mean, a lot of times for 2 to 3 hours at a time. I mean, it was, we were just really getting into it. And I'm glad and proud to say that Butch and we did come up with some decent information. It's still an enigma. It's still something that we worked on off and on. But I'm very proud of my friendship with Butch. I had people warn me not to get involved with Butch, and you guys know this for a fact. There have been people saying, you don't want to get involved with Butch because he has his own way of doing things. And I said, well, if I can get down to the nitty gritty of this case, I don't mind working with the guy. And we hit it off, and it was what it was. And then he of course he was involved with UFOs. He wasn't involved with any type of cryptids or anything at that time. And as we were working on this Todd Sees case, he started getting interested in some of the things I was looking at. And the upright canines in Pennsylvania was something that grabbed his attention. And he said, do you mind if I get involved with this? I said, no. I said, and that's all I had to say, because he was in head first. And that's when we started doing these investigations. And he was really, really getting very involved with it. And in fact, he used to blame me for even getting him involved in it. And it's, hang on, I always get this, how in the hell did you get me involved with this stuff? I mean, this stuff's crazy. And, it just seems like every time we talked, we had more and more crazy things coming up. So, yeah, that's how it panned out. And of course, he was my right hand on the Phantoms of Monsters 14 research team. And he was also involved with the radio show with Sean and I. We did two different shows with Butch on there. And so, I loved working with Butch. It was great. I mean, and when we went out, it was fun as well. So,
Lon, I just have to say, you never had a short phone call. with Butch.
No.
And Dave, you know what I'm saying? There was no such thing as a short phone call with Butch. You got Butch on the horn, you might as well clear your afternoon because, man, and you know, that's the thing I miss is even towards the end, I talked to him maybe a couple times from between November and December, which sucked because, you know, you could almost set your watch by a call from Butch, and, you know, his health wasn't great, and you lose some of that connection, which really sucked for me because, like I said, it was a really personal connection with me and Butch. You don't travel down roads and share meals together without getting to know each other, and, you know, not just professionally, but, you know, personally. And I used to love his candor with things. You know, you brought that up, Lon, that, you know, people, you know, would warn you about Butch. And they'd say the same thing to me. Oh, you know, you can't get involved with Butch. Why not? Tell me why. And Eric knows the same thing. And, you know, tell me why I can't. First of all, you don't ever tell me what I can and can't do. I'm going to do the opposite anyhow. And I just got to know the guy. And, you know, I base my, you know, I guess, belief in a person by my interactions with him. And was always honest with me and, you know, carried himself with integrity, honest guy. And we had a lot of fun. I mean, there wasn't one thing we couldn't laugh about on the roads. I have some videos I'd share with you guys that probably aren't politically correct offline, you know, just little impressions and things but it was just phenomenal. And I had so much fun with Butch. He came up here just one day. I had a bunch of guys that were really interested, former law enforcement guys that were interested in UFOs and really getting into the Bigfoot subject. And I was talking to Butch. He goes, well, how about I bring the van up? And I tell you what, he and Troy, you know, his research partner, Troy, drove up. And it's about a 3-hour drive from where he lived to where we were at, and spent the whole day there. They left at about midnight, 1 a.m., and made the whole drive back home. Just to came up and, you know, show off the van and spend some time with some former, you know, retired law enforcement guys, which was pretty cool. That's the kind of guy Butch was. And you talk about Todd Sees, probably the most frustrating case any of us have worked on.
Yeah.
And Butch had work on that. You know, I read the autopsy report in Albertus, Pennsylvania. It was in my hand for people that say it didn't exist. It was in my hand. I looked at it. I saw.
Yeah, that's right. We had, I didn't make it. I forget why it was I couldn't make it up there, but yeah, we had that round table thing up there, and Butch presented the evidence and such, and some of the stuff we were getting, and
compelling.
He tracked down the autopsy report. It was done by a private firm, and actually it was done out in Allentown, which, you know, is crazy on itself. And, you know, that whole case, I don't know. I would really, in tribute to Butch, I would really love to be able to get that thing opened up and get more information coming out on it, because, you know, we got a lot of pushback on that thing. And look, people who don't know, I mean, that don't know Butch, and people do know Butch, he ruffled the feathers of MUFON. And the people in Pennsylvania who ran MUFON, they didn't get along at all. And I'm in the same boat. So, so you know, but he was with MUFON for years as an investigator. So, but this Todd Sees case is something that MUFON, UFORC, and all these other reporting agencies and investigators are trying to push under the rug. And, we didn't let it close up. And well, you know, I had to pull out the interview we had one day on the on the show on Beyond the Edge Radio. Then I think the next week we had Fred come on, and he jumped on me about the interview, and that was funny in itself. So we got a lot of pushback on that.
Well, Butch wasn't a cult of personality guy.
Yeah.
You know, like he was, he was, you know, had his beliefs, and that's what he went after.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, 3 months ago, he came on the air, and for some reason he started talking about an ex-girlfriend that he named Godzilla because she was about the size of Godzilla, and she sounded like Godzilla. And I'm trying so hard not to laugh, and I've got people in my chat room are like, "Is he saying this right now?" Because everybody wants to be offended about everything, and here he goes on for about 7 minutes about this Godzilla X that was after him, and oh my gosh, I just about died, and afterwards I called him up, and he was like, I said, "We got to talk about Godzilla, man." I said, "That was beautiful." He goes, "Too much, though?" I'm like, "Yeah, too much." But, I want to bring up two guys. I had a bunch of people when I started bringing on Butch at once a month. I had a bunch of people to come out and say, he wasn't a cop. He got caught impersonating a police officer. He wasn't, who he said he was. He's a big fake. He's a dummy. He screwed MUFON in Pennsylvania. All of this stuff. I had it all thrown at me. And as a journalist by trade, when I first heard that, of course, I got to go investigate this. But I had a conversation with him about it. And I said, "Butch, I don't know you that well. I'm just trying to put a good show together. Like, help me out here." And he sent me the photo that you had up here of him in the newspaper as a police officer. And I was like, that's good enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we ran with it. And, every now and again we would get, it was weird. Once every like 8-9 months, there'd be some jerk coming into our chat room and trying to insult him from that whatever crowd that was very much against him. And I would just completely tell him to piss off. And that's the only thing you could do. Right. But I mean, Butch was a guy, you either loved him or you hated him, but 98% of the people loved him, even though his attitude said we should hate him.
And the people that hated him, if they met him, changed their opinion pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
A handful of people, that's the exception to. But to your point, Dave, about the police officer thing, one of the things that, because I looked into it as well, before, I think it was like 1974, there was no like registry or like record keeping of police officers in these townships. There was like no database where you could go in and search. Like it was just, you were on the payroll for this department or not. There's a, photograph right there of him being a police officer. And, to the point, that was so long ago. I'm focusing on his UFO research from like 1989 on, that he wasn't a cop at anywhere near that time. So to me, it didn't really matter. And I know that might be a little naive for some people, but it didn't matter to me.
No, it didn't matter to me either. Like I go by with any of my guests, I go by, how do they treat me? I mean, people have said crap about me. People have said crap about you guys. And I don't think there isn't a single person in this field that hasn't been attacked. It doesn't matter how nice you are or how gritty you are. But, in the end, it comes down to a few things. It was all about integrity. And how do you treat me and my listeners? And Butch loved the SOR listeners. And every show, he would let them know what our listenership meant to him. And that tells me a lot about the man that he was. Never mind the great stories about the investigations and everything along those lines. But it was just, it was powerful. It was powerful the way he fed off the energy of any audience he was in front of.
And you're right about that, because he loved the listeners. When we were doing the existence of strange things together, we were trying to figure out what to call our listeners, and we went from we settled on the existers, Lon. You remember? But you know what Butch wanted to call them, don't you? Do you remember?
I don't.
Testes. He wanted to call them testes. I didn't go over well with the production team, but I thought it was great.
Well, that's Butch.
That was Butch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. You and I talked Butch into coming on and being the wingman on Arcane when it was first started. We had done it about a year or so. Then I talked Butch into coming in. I think you did too. And he was there, nah, I can't do that. And he was hesitant. I said, well, try it out, man. Just see what you can do. And he was great on there. And, when we got onto the existence of strange things, which I'll tell you guys, and that was a pain in the ass because we had to, it was a podcast and we had to do like 4 or 5 hour sessions of recording this show. And the guy who was running it was, he was a taskmaster. And I mean, I got to the point where I eventually just told him to go stick it. And I got away from it. But Butch and you hung in with it. I got to give you credit for that. But
he was so miserable. But he's like, I just can't leave you, Sean. He goes,
yeah.
I gotta be there with you. He goes,
That's what he told me. He said, I can't leave Sean.
Nope. He stayed, and I tell you what, week after week, we spent an hour trying to get his microphone just right. So, and because our producer was a taskmaster, and I'm like, the man's 70 years old. Like, cut him some slack. We got to get this sound right. Well, okay. So we got it down eventually, but I know he hated it. But again, I really felt like it was one of those things he did for me. And he made it a lot of fun. And there are times where we were doing a guest and he could care less about anything they had to talk about. And he would stumble to try to find something interesting in the conversation. But he hung through. Yeah. And he did it. And I'll always appreciate that because, again, it was, we built a friendship, man. Like, you could talk to, just not just professionally, but personally. And the candor upon which he operated. I was having some problems with my wife and, things weren't going so great at the time. And he goes, don't be an idiot. She's already too good for you. What are you doing? What are you thinking? And I'm like, you know what? You're right. And I just love the guy. He was just so honest and he cared. Always asked about the family, always asked about the kids. Like he cared about me. And I had a lot of fun with Butch. I keep saying that, but long car rides, man. And when you get older, you got to stop a lot more and you got to travel a little differently. I didn't care because the stories I got from point A to point B to our final destination were just fantastic.
I wish I could have been there with you, man. I'm jealous of that.
I wish I would have recorded every one of them.
Yeah.
Might have had some indictments after it, but it was okay. They were a lot of fun.
Eric, you got anything to say?
I'm actually just enjoying this. It's great to hear people reminisce and remember the good things about Butch. Yeah, I remember there's people that, after I met him out east, there are people that warned me about Butch, stay away from him. He's a fraud. He's a phony. The whole police thing was made up. And I don't, how can I say this? I don't mistrust the people that told me that, but I think they were mistaken, as Sean had mentioned about the not finding the police records. A very good friend of mine told me about that. He wasn't able to locate police records on him. And that didn't matter to me. I mean, if he was or he wasn't a police officer, I knew Butch from the point that I got to meet him in the late 2009, 2010 forward. I didn't care about his past. We all have issues in our past. I cared about the man who he was then and now. And I got to know him really well. And we had a lot of fun on some of those phone calls. And just the the language and the brute honesty, and just he didn't care who he offended. He just told you like it is. And whether you liked it or not, he'd be honest with you. If you didn't want to hear it, he'd tell you. If you needed to hear it, you heard it. And that's just how he was. And I'm just enjoying listening to your guys' memories of him. I remember that radio interview so well, Lon, that you and I did with Butch, the Todd Sees case, and then that I won't lower myself to the standards, but that person that insulted Butch and made all those comments and insisted coming on the next week to counter the show. Good grief. But Butch just laughed it off. That was the kind of person he was. He was like, you know what? You can't please everybody. And I'm just going to keep on being me and doing what I do. And that's what he did. And that's what I admire most about him. He just did what he did. He was who he was. Love him or hate him. That was Butch Witkowski. And he didn't try to be somebody different to please anybody else or to act a certain way because some people didn't want him to act that way. Butch was Butch, and he was very colorful in some of his metaphors and language, and that always made me laugh on the phone calls when we were talking. And he'd call somebody a name or a situation a name, and he didn't hold back. Mm-mm. And I was like, man, I was blushing. But that was Butch.
Lon, when we were doing the pilot, or the sizzle reel for the show we were going to make.
Yeah.
As some of the photographs that are there, you can see
the photographs are up there now.
I mean, that was a hell of a day.
That was a fun day.
It was a loaded day too, and Butch could be a little impatient sometimes. So, are these guys going to hurry up? What the hell are we doing here? Like, what more do they want? They just want me to drive around this freaking town all day.
They did. I mean, they had him in the truck, and I wish I could get that thing and keep it, but they, it was the property of the production company.
Yeah.
But we had an actual production company from New York City come in, and we were doing a sizzle reel to shop a show, which was going to be called Cryptid Hunters.
Yeah.
To the networks. And it was Butch, Sean, Tim Renner, Troy Knoll, and myself. And we were the Pennsylvania guys from the team, and we were going to make this show. Well, unfortunately, they shopped it, and it just didn't pan out. But, we were going to try to do a lot of other things as well, but it just didn't work out. So, unfortunately, that didn't. But that day was cool because we were at my old house. My father had just passed away not long before that. And, that property, it was just perfect because we could do as much as we could because we were out in the big parking lot and everything. Yeah. And but that was I had fun that day. I really did.
It was a blast.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
What I think the best part of that day is they had all these shots set up that they wanted to do with us. And as you know, Butch and Lon and myself just naturally do, we're end up in the kitchen, and we're sitting around your big kitchen table, you remember? And these guys are looking at each other, and all of a sudden we're just sitting there having a regular conversation. All us guys just shooting the breeze and talking about things, and the cameras are up. They're filming all of us. The producers are like, this is great stuff right here. Like, just all this stuff they set up, it was the natural stuff that happened that was probably would have been the best television.
Oh, I think so. I mean, there was, because we did have a pretty intense conversation about some of the cases we had been working on. And the producer and his camera guy were there, and there's three of them there. Him, the associate producer, and all that. They were filming all this. So it was cool. It was really cool. You're talking about. I tell you, the best time being with Butch is when you're in the car with him or the van with him, for 4 or 5 hours at a stretch. And I'm telling you, it is nonstop. You are hearing every little thing that Butch is interested in, and it was some pretty interesting things. And if he felt like it was pertinent for him to bring a subject up, it was coming up. And that was that last trip I took with him up to Eric's up in Fayette County. That was an interesting weekend. It really was.
We always used to talk about him coming up to Canada, because the one thing that Butch always had time for was people's stories and their encounters, especially the close encounters. And knowing that I had a few of my own, one of his dreams was to come up to British Columbia where I was, because he'd always heard so much about it up here and wanted to get up here to get into the forest and start looking for some Sasquatch up here. And I always said, doors open. And then, the heart attack, and then COVID, and then unfortunately we didn't get to do it. But I mean, he was always asking, come on, what do you got going on? You got to have something going on up there. Tell me about it. And we'd go into detail, and, I would look for hints on what to do with my Bigfoot gifting sites that I had up here. And when I had photographs, some were great, some weren't, but I could always count on him to break down a photograph of a haunted house or a ghost or something along those lines that would really, really lead to something. And he would tell me point blank, yeah, you got something there or you got shit there. It was one of the two. I knew I had a 50-50 chance going in, but I'm saddened that my friend and our friend in general never got a chance to come up here. And I'll regret that.
Mm.
Yeah, there were 2 trips he and I were supposed to do this year, Dave. One was to Cherry Springs up in Pennsylvania, the darkest skies on the East Coast, and then Gettysburg to go out and hang out with Lon for the weekend. And they were on the agenda for this year, and it's sad we're not going to be able to take those trips. I still think I'm going to go to Cherry Springs, and I'm going to go out and see Lon anyhow, but it's going to suck a lot more that Butch isn't with me, because those were things we wanted to do together.
Yeah, unfortunately, Butch had gotten COVID when I was hosting some friends in Gettysburg, and he couldn't make it. So yeah, unfortunately, that's what happened. But I think we're going to do something this summer. I know Luis is supposed to come out from LA, and some of the other team, maybe we can get together. I think Tim Renner is going to get involved. He just, I don't know if you saw my interview with him last week, but he just did another book about some of the bridges at Gettysburg. Pretty interesting stuff. So yeah, we got plenty to look at, but we'll get something together. But unfortunately, we want Butch with us, and that's a big loss right there, because it was always interesting to hear his take on a few things. I mean, I think Vincent put a question in earlier about what was our favorite case. Well, of course, it had to be a Todd Sees case.
Yeah, hands down.
Had
to be Todd Sees.
Yeah, but we really got involved with this upright canine dogman thing in Pennsylvania, and after I look back at it, I think Butch probably uncovered at least 30 cases. Some were bigger than others, but he did go out. He was out there looking at areas. We had a pale crawler sighting out by French Creek out there in Berks County. And he was setting up trail cams out there. Him and the ranger that were out there were setting up trail cams. I don't know if they're still even out there yet. They might be. I don't know. But yeah, he was doing that. We had some sightings near Pottstown, and so no, he was active up until the end, really.
He had spent some time up in Clearfield too, County, Pennsylvania, investigating some of those upright canine sightings there. And he actually went to, I think it's a wolf, I don't want to say a rescue, but like a sanctuary they had over there. And he actually visited it. And that was one of the things I appreciated, because he took the time to go out and spend the time to be with real wolves. Look how, are what these people seeing actual wolves, or are they something different? What would make the difference between the two? What physical, descriptions of wolves can I go out and actually physically verify and see and experience behavior wise, and compare that to these sightings? And when he was with the wolves, man, I don't know what it was, but he was like mesmerized by them. Like, he talked about that trip to the sanctuary like ad nauseum for weeks after he was out there.
He was fascinated by it.
I think he took a whole new reverence for them when he left and had that experience, just how large they were. I think that's what really blew his mind, and gave him a different perspective and angle to work some of these, canine cryptid sightings.
Yeah, and he made a lot of trips out to locations. He was Clearfield. I think he had at least 2 trips out there. He also was up in Center County. He was out in Blair County, and he was also in Cambria County for different investigations. we were for a while there. We were getting some really interesting sightings. I mean, but I'm going to have what I'm going to have to do is at one point I'm going to do a whole show on that again, and do a roundtable thing, and because and I'm going to say it now, the show is rebranding. It's not going to be Arcane Radio much longer. It's going to be Phantoms and Monsters Radio, and it's going to be. We're going to try to do call-ins, answer more questions, and do more roundtable discussions on subjects. And I think that's what people want. I mean, having guests is good, but you need to get those guests that are conducive to what you're doing.
Yeah,
and that's where people are interested. And I think we're gonna concentrate on that more.
Hard to not recycle them too quickly between shows. Like, it seems like there's a circuit. You get a guest on, and the next thing you know, you think you're on something hot, and then you finish your show, and they're on 4 or 5, 6 other shows afterwards doing the same thing. It's hard, right? Especially when you're trying to be fresh and, unique. And sometimes it's hard because these topics are anything but fresh anymore. But I'm excited for you and glad to see you switching it up a little bit. You and I started Arcane Radio at the beginning. Sometimes you need a new coat of paint, to spiffy things up. And
I when we did when I got off of the Existence of Strange Things, that was 2018, I think.
Yeah,
or 19. Anyway, I went back and I asked you. I said, "Do you mind if I start Arcane back up?" And I mean. So I've been doing that now since then, and but no, it's time to change it up a bit. And now people can probably find me because they'll see Fans and Monsters say, "Well, that's Lon," because a lot of people didn't even know Arcane Radio was me for the most part. So,
well, it's funny, I feel like Eric and I are responsible for dragging you into this podcast.
Oh, you guys did get me. You were responsible.
You remember? We brought you on Beyond the Edge Radio with that little. I love segments, Strictly Paranormal. With Lon Strickler, you remember?
Yeah.
I love those little.
We had Nick Redfern doing the segment.
Yep. Yeah.
Baker was doing one. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
It was surprising. James Baker, a good friend of mine, and Butch never met each other. No, they did once in Gettysburg. In Gettysburg. They met each other in Gettysburg. But they both left such an impression on one another. And the only time they really interacted, much like you, Dave, is through radio, right? Through the podcasting. And just the two of those guys, they had this, rivalry with each other, one-liners, pounding each other with one-liners, and they only met each other once. But it was never ceased between those two. And when I told Bake, that Butch passed away, he was really upset about it.
Yeah.
He couldn't even come up with a one-liner that was funny to, send him off with. Like, he was pretty hurt by it. So
Baker had me rolling up there that weekend up in Gettysburg because that guy come up with some, and I just imagine him and Butch together. I mean, talking about two characters. I mean, so, yeah.
He's my curse. I'm stuck with Baker till the day but he's fun. Man. But just like I said, it's that, personality, to take it back to Butch is you tried to get along with him. You could get along with him. And I think people that had a problem with him didn't give him a chance. They had a preconceived notion or something they heard and didn't get to spend time with him and learn him. Because once you got to know Butch, you loved him.
Well, let's also remember too that 90% of the critics out there in this field are going on reaction of what they've read online.
Yep.
And the BS is always a little bit more juicy than the truth and the reality of things. And for Butch, I loved how he had strong shoulders about that. My only wish for him is I wish he could have seen one of those bipedal canines.
Yeah.
He had the tracks, he had the evidence, he had the spots of where to watch. And that was his dream, was to see one of these bipedal canines or to have some UFO land right in front of him and have some beings get out. He could, shoot the breeze with them and kind of go from there. and have his own close encounters of the third kind of situation.
Well, that'd have been an interesting encounter.
Oh, yeah. What the hell are you doing here? Who are you? Where you come from? Jesus, you smell.
Hold still. I'm going to grab a hold of one of you little...
Oh, yeah.
Going to get that proof.
Well, Butch used to live out in Tucson, Arizona. And
Yeah.
he saw a huge UFO. It was 89?
1989, yeah.
And I think that's what did it for him. That started it off. And at least he got to see one. I have never seen one that I could really say I saw one. I see orbs and stuff, but not like that. And that's what did it for him.
But what's that say, guys? That he had this singular sighting in 1989, didn't really have a whole hell of a lot of interest in it.
Yeah.
And he goes from being, a spectator and a witness to this full-fledged second post-retirement career in ufology.
Yeah.
And the money he spent in the research on the equipment. And Butch didn't have cheap equipment, guys.
No.
Like, the equipment in that van was good equipment. Like, it wasn't junk. Like, anybody could go to dollar stores and put stuff together and make it look like you got stuff. He had Panasonic Tough Books. Like, you name it, FLIR cameras, you name it, he had it. And, so how impactful did that sighting have to be in 89 for him to not just invest the time, but the copious amounts of money he put into it?
Yeah. We all talk about how expensive it is to do what we do. And because we're not making any money. Not to even get close to compensating ourselves for what we spent. It just does not happen. You can write all the books and do all the blogs you want to. It's not you're never going to make up for it. But still, he did. He was serious, and he got bit that day. He saw that, and I asked him about that, and I it was the same answer I got every time. I don't know. I just found it so interesting. I had to get into it. And when they moved back to Pennsylvania. He and his wife moved back to Pennsylvania not long after that. That's he got involved with MUFON then. And
I think we have to send a little love to Peggy for, supporting him and that all through the years, man.
She did. Yeah.
My wife throws a fit if I spend a little money on this. I couldn't imagine telling my wife, hey, I just, dropped a boatload of money on a van and, a shit ton of money on gear. I hope you don't mind.
She supported Butch.
She did.
She really did. And she's a great lady. And
very sweet.
Yeah.
I met her once and Butch is like, Butch is like, that's the boss right there. The boss.
Well, he said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was such a sweet lady. Tough, you had to be, I guess, to be married to Butch.
Yeah,
tough, but
so.
A lovely woman. He had a lot of love for her too, man. Like in his grandkids.
Yeah. He did.
I'd say he used to bust my balls all the time. He goes, "You're not any older than my grandkids." Or I'd say something. He goes, "Hey, shut up! You're a kid."
Well,
shut up.
I'd be on the phone with Butch, and he'd say, "Well, how's our son doing?" I knew that was you. I said, I don't know. I talked to Sean, this and that, but that's how he would say, "How's our son doing?"
Yeah, man, I tell you. And he was very much sometimes that, paternal father, let me tell you, kick you in the ass when you need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you have to be so science-minded? Open your mind a little bit. I tried. I didn't like it. Well, try it again.
Well, I am happy to say that UFORCOP is going to continue on. The Facebook page is still going. Now he shut the website down about 2 years ago, but the Facebook page is going to continue on. And Sean and Barb Becker and myself are going to run it. For the time being, I may even rebuild a website for it at some point. I don't know. We'll see. But I just, it's not like I feel obligated to do it, but I want to do it. Butch was proud of it, and he did a lot of work, and he was really into the human mutilation, abduction part of ufology, the different, not the nuts and bolts craft stuff. He was into the the weirder stuff, the woo you want to call it or whatever. But yeah, that fascinated him. So, and that's why he started UFORCOP, because it's it's a bit of a different. It's different, So yeah, I think in tribute to Butch, I may very well do a website at some point and get you guys involved in it, and we can do it as part of Phantoms and Monsters, and even though it always has been part of Phantoms and Monsters, but if other folks in the team want to get involved with it, we can do that.
Sign me up.
Do you guys mind if I show you something?
Sure.
Or a couple of pieces here. For people who don't listen to my show, I have an artist named Filth who has always drawn cartoons up for my show, and Butch was one of his favorite targets here, and I apologize, I'm all mixed up here. So if you just want to add that down on the screen there.
Did you send it to Vincent?
Yeah, I'm trying to share my screen, so
Okay.
Vincent will have to just grab the blurred out window there and click on it. I don't know if he can or not. There we go. So
Okay.
there's this one. There was this one here. This was Butch right up here. This was a Hollywood Squares type of cartoon that he drew out with all the different monsters that Butch would go look at.
You have to send that to me, Dave.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's this one here. Here's Butch right here. And, just anything he could do to give a piece of humor to it all. And there's a few more here.
Oh my God, he sure did.
Oh yeah, Butch. Between Butch and Dr. Bob McGuire, we got quite a few. Here's one of the best. Here's a couple. This is one of my favorite ones, right there. Says that should do it, and I say what should do it. That should draw Sasquatch out of hiding. How so, Butch? They are curious, and I doubt they have seen an abacus before. All else fails, can we try some beer? And then here's another beautiful one of Butch right here on my round table. When I ask about what's with the abacus, he goes, sometimes you have to go back to the basics. Trust me on this, Dave. And let me see if there's any more in here of Butch. This one's kind of funny. Now, the point to this one was last year, a couple hours before showtime, I was going to get something from my vehicle, and I slipped down my stairs and threw out my entire back. And I had Butch on that night, and I said I slipped on some ice and hurt myself. I'm old. And Butch on air said, "You ain't that old, Dave. I have socks older than you."
That's Butch.
Guys, don't cry when you see this one.
Oh. That's great.
That's rough. Yeah.
That one hurt. I mean, in a good way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
I do hope he is meeting the other realm as we speak, because I he and I had talked about that once before. And I told him, would you be interested, or, if you were abducted, what would you do? What would you. He said, I don't know, but it would be an interesting trip. He said, when I die, maybe that's where I'll go. And that was what he told me, and exactly what he told me. And he probably is among the stars with us now as well.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of them over the years, of friends and people we lost in the community. Amazing. But I tell you, Butch hurt, man.
Yeah.
That one stung, and I don't. It was unexpected to me, and I always joked with Butch. The things about being friends with old people is that your friends die before you. You hope, and and that's what his response. Gee, thanks. And but it's true. It stinks because just. He and I were supposed to do some more things with Small Town Monsters. He was supposed to be a big part of, a bigger part in the Night Visitors and some of the other ones Seth was doing. And, when I talked to Seth was just, shocked and stunned.
Yeah.
As well, because there's so much work he had left to finish. That's what, I guess, not just the sass, but what really pisses you off. Like, he had so much more to do. And, I'm not going to be...
Sean, the good thing about that is he left it in capable hands.
Yeah, but I'm not half as good as he is when it came to this UFO stuff, let me tell you.
Well,
not half as good.
We never will be, but he left it in capable hands.
Well, he was supposed to do, like you said, he was supposed to do another UFO segment, I believe, with Seth and Shannon. And then they asked him about doing... a film on Dogman in Pennsylvania, Upright Canines, and he was going to do that. Unfortunately, it didn't get done. So,
well, that day we did the shooting for On the Trail of UFOs.
Yeah,
they just showed a little bit of, and I hope they have that footage of that day, that couple hours we spent there, because I've never seen a more captivated group of people than the people sitting there listening to Butch talk about these abductions. And he was talking about the stuff that you don't hear about on TV, these really dark aspects of, Butch had the knowledge, he had the stories, and he could just rattle them off like it was nobody's business. And he, I hope in some way we see some of that, because
I tell you, folks, if you do get a chance to see that segment, and where Butch does the interview for the film, it is one of his best interviews I've ever heard him do. It was very interesting. It was very well done, and it really showed how much he did know about the subject.
Yeah,
and I was impressed. And I told him, I said, "Wow, man, I didn't think you had it in you, because that was so good."
I tell you one more thing, because I know we probably got to wrap up, and
yeah.
I don't like to be a mic hog, even though I do. Him and Stan Gordon getting together in Southwest Pennsylvania. Just him and Stan Gordon sharing the same space, having conversations, and Butch showing Stan around the van. And there's some history there, right?
Sure.
But there was just such an energy and just a moment. I'm standing there with Shannon, and I'm like, this is, for those of us that are in this field, this is kind of, I don't know, history right here. These two guys come together and just having a go. It was great.
Well, guys, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. It was very enjoyable, and I enjoyed it, and I'm quite sure the audience did. And again, we're going to all get together on Dave's show Monday evening at midnight, or Tuesday midnight, and Monday at 9:00 Pacific time, and on Spaced Out Radio. So, be sure you tune in. And once again, it'll be a longer show. We'll probably get more things out there. I'm quite sure Dave has a few things in store for us. So, guys, thanks again for coming on.
Appreciate that. And, I'll never forget. I'm going to quote Butch right here. Call me if you need bail money.
Yep, that's exactly what he said to me.
Love that, guy.
Thanks for asking me on.
God bless.
Thanks.
Okay, you take care.
Thank you, Lon.
Now, if you have an unexplained encounter or sighting, feel free to contact me through the Fans of Monsters blog site. I want to again thank Sean Forker, Eric Altman, and Dave Scott for joining me this evening. And thanks to each and all you for watching and chatting. If you made a Super Chat donation, it's truly appreciated. Your support is what makes all this possible. And please like, subscribe, and share. Now, next week, we're going to have an update on the Chicago hair Mothman phenomena. Joining me will be our investigators Emmanuel Navarrete and Tobias Whalen. So, again, I got to say about Butch. I mean, I'm really going to miss the guy. He was one of a kind, and he kind of made it all fun for me. Honestly, I mean, he was. Anytime I had a question or had something, he was there to pick the phone up, and I always appreciate that. And I am going to miss him. So, until next week, stay healthy, have a safe, enjoyable weekend. Good night.